Welcome to Politics Now. We're sitting down with Nevada Congressional District 4 candidate, Amy Vilela. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
So you had decided to run for this office back in the summertime, back in July. And that is long before any allegations about the incumbent Ruben Kihuen were announced, and before he got into such trouble and before he announced that he was not going to run again. So you were in it expecting to run against him in a Democratic primary.
Yes, it definitely was.
Yeah. So you're a Democrat, he's a Democrat. Why run against a fellow Democrat?
You know, I really, truly believe in democracy. And I believe that we should be holding our representatives accountable to the campaign promises they made when they were running. And one of the campaign promises that Kihuen made is that he felt health care was a human right. And I really disagree with his stand, not only on health care, but on many other issues, that his voting record. And it really propelled me to hold our representatives accountable. I think it makes our candidates and our representatives stronger, and it really gives a voice to the people. That was important to me. And
after the election, I think not only Ruben Kihuen, but all the rest of the Nevada delegation all said we should concentrate on fixing the Affordable Care Act as our approach to health care, with the sole exception of Dina Titus, who said, look, we need to go with this Medicare for All bill. John Conyers of Michigan has this bill. She signed on as a co-sponsor. We'll see if that bill is reintroduced now that Congressman Conyers is no longer going to be there. You support the Medicare for All concept.
Yes, I do, both from a humane position as well as from being fiscally responsible in helping our economy. I definitely believe that we need to ensure that Americans have, all of us have, coverage that is adequate and fixes the pitfalls in our current system. I also was on the front lines fighting to ensure that we were going to keep the ACA in place as we move forward to a comprehensive plan such as Medicare for All, to ensure that all citizens are covered and we don't have needless deaths in this country due to a lack of health insurance. The rate that right now that we are having is approximately around 30,000 deaths a year from a lack of health insurance in this country. So it's affecting a lot of Americans across this country, and it's unnecessary in this great country.
And so you look at the Affordable Care Act as sort of a way station on the way to the ultimate goal, which is to have a Medicare for All system.
Yes, most definitely.
Which is, ironically enough, that's what Harry Reid admitted in a moment of candor several years ago on Nevada Week in Review, said, ultimately, yeah, that's what we're going to end up with. This was probably the best they could get at the time, but it was certainly not going to be the end game for them.
Well, and it's continuously being attacked. It will always be under attack. And there are some flaws in the system. There are, the fact that we have, right now about 30 million people without insurance. We need to be working towards a system that is not only humane for Americans, but also helping out our economy. We would be saving in our government right now if we implemented Medicare for All approximately $17 trillion over the next 10 years. It would also free up businesses to be able to compete based on their company culture instead of what kind of Cadillac health insurance plan they have. And Americans themselves would be spending far less on health insurance every year for the small increase in taxes they would receive. They would be able to then save on all of the co-payments, all of the deductibles, and the cost of insurance itself. It really is a no-brainer to implement a program like this in the United States.
And I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people, when they hear the Medicaid, Medicare for All, nobody really mentions the other side of it, which is, yeah, we would have to pay more in taxes, but we would have a benefit in terms of being able to get access to health care, regardless of whether we have a job, regardless of where we are in the country.
Right.
There's no out of network if it's a nationwide single payer type system.
Exactly, and it would really be a boost to our economy as well. We really would be supporting an entrepreneurial spirit, and people would be able to do the things that they have the most love for and skill for.
You said they would save $17 trillion. Describe how you got to that number. Where do the savings come from?
Well, first of all, a lot of people don't realize that the government already is paying an enormous amount for health care for people who are uninsured. They pay it out, and they pay it out as a premium. They're paying insurance companies and the healthcare industry on a whole a hugely more expensive cost than our other comparable countries. We are paying for the insane CEO salaries. We're paying for dividends to their shareholders, to lobbyists, for advertising. By bringing it all back into one system and just having them manage the payment out to all the providers, the government would be saving all that money they're paying out right now for people who don't have insurance. One of them being my daughter. When she died, it cost the taxpayers $500,000. The cost, and she's not the only one. This cost is growing day by day as our cost for, pharmaceutical and for care in hospitals and providers is growing exponentially.
Yeah, and that really is the reason why you're so passionate about this issue, was the situation with your daughter's death. Tell us a little bit about that. What happened, and how the insurance system didn't work in that case.
Sure. My daughter, Shalyn, she was 22 years of age. She was working two jobs as a CNA to put herself through college to become an RN. She had just moved out here from Kansas City, and she went to a hospital with every symptom and sign of a blood clot. But because she was unable to provide proof of insurance, they didn't take the time necessary to really figure out what was wrong with her leg. And my daughter, eventually she died in my arms from a pulmonary embolism, from a totally preventable, disease. And let me tell you, that is the worst type of pain that a parent can endure. And it's not something that anyone should have to go through, and especially not something that is needless. And when I started getting out into the community and started talking to other Nevadans and people from across the United States, I began to realize, this isn't just me, and it isn't just health care. Many, many Americans are suffering catastrophically, whether financially or even with their own life, because our current system is not set up to advocate for the people. We need people in office who are advocating to put people over profit. That's what it comes down to. We need to take out the profit motive.
And you said in your daughter's case, that money was spent virtually at the end of her life. That $500,000 at the end of her life, when it could have been prevented if they had paid attention and realized it was an acute case when she first came in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so, in terms of getting that on, when Bernie Sanders ran for president, this was one of his major initiatives. Hillary Clinton was one of those Democrats, like those in our delegation, who said, well, we need to just fix the Affordable Care Act. Let's not start over. That was the phrase. Let's not start over with a whole new thing. Whereas Senator Sanders said, no, let's start over, because this is what we're going to end up with anyway. Do you think that the country is prepared to accept a single-payer system now?
We are definitely on the road to that, that realization. Everyone in this country, all of us right now, are at a time where I think most of us are really becoming awoken politically. And we are having to suffer the consequences of some of the laws and legislation that we have in place right now. We are watching, and we are watching what our politicians are doing and becoming educated on the issues and the bills, more so than we have in many years. I do think the American people are ready. They're tired of seeing their loved ones die or navigate through a serious illness with worrying about how they're going to cover it. I mean, if you go online and look at the GoFundMe pages, I mean, the vast majority are for medical, medical illnesses. And, then we also have the elderly population, where we're hearing horrific stories of how they are having to cut their medication in half or dying because they cannot afford to pay for the medications needed to sustain their life. All of us are tired of not being represented in Congress, in the Senate, where they're actually putting out that the people come first. not the special interest, not the lobbyist, and not their donors. We need to have true representation. And I think we see that coming across the United States. The American people are saying enough is enough. We want to have a seat at the table now. We want to be heard, and we want our issues put to the forefront.
And yet, when you say the people come first, I think what you're really saying is the people ought to come first. The people should come first. But we saw with this tax bill that was just passed, quite the opposite. In fact, speaking of health care, the elimination of the penalty for not buying insurance under the Affordable Care Act eliminated in this bill, which many experts predict is going to make it less stable, cost people insurance, and ultimately undermine the law itself. So I imagine you've got a thought or two about that health care bill as well.
I sure do. I think what was most telling is that there was a senator that signed the bill that actually said he hadn't read it and that he would need to have an accountant explain to him what was going on in the bill.
Oh, you're an accountant,
and
right?
I'm an accountant, so I'd be more than happy to break it down for the people in Nevada and the United States. This bill is going to increase exponentially the taxes on the working class in this country. And in a time when we're seeing a decrease in our middle class, we're losing a part of our population that America's always been proud about, our strong middle class, our strong working class. This is really, a slap in the face to the American people. And with the 1.5 trillion that price tag this comes at, you can be assured they're going to come after key provisions that we have for our population, such as Social Security, Medicaid.
Didn't Speaker Ryan say that we have to do entitlement reform now because of the deficit that is going to be exacerbated by this bill?
Yeah, I don't use the word entitlement because the American people are paying for these things. But yes, he's coming after these key social programs that, our elderly deserve to have a dignified retirement. They have paid into this. They have worked their lives and contributed to build our country to where it is today. They deserve to have dignity in retirement. We also have people with disabilities. I know as a part of my career, I worked for companies that we were actually servicing people with disabilities. They are already struggling as it is to make ends meet. And these people need the help. This is our duty as a society to ensure that we are taking care of the people in our society that need our help.
When you talk about some of these things, you're talking about retirement security, you're talking about health care and the ability to have health care. I think a lot of people would agree with you. A lot of people would say, yeah, you know what, we do need these things. And many of those people would say, even if I had to pay a little more, if I knew I wouldn't have to deal with the insurance bureaucracy, and I wouldn't have to have co-pay, co-insurance, whatever the latest thing they come up with, I would do it. But it seems like that is not where the people are, because you had Bernie Sanders run for office. He lost in the primary to Hillary Clinton, who was a more moderate Democrat. Then Hillary Clinton lost in the general election to Donald Trump, who was promising to repeal the Affordable Care Act and lower people's taxes, and he got a majority in the Electoral College. Not a majority of the people, but he won the election essentially based on those promises. It seems like people wanted to go that way instead of the way that you're talking about.
That we have to also mention that Donald Trump was also saying a lot of the key words and promising that, we're going to give you health care. We're going to give jobs. We're going to do this. The people want representation. They want these issues, addressed. I think our job going into 2018 is to get people in office that are actually in touch with the population, who understand the challenges and are willing to go to bat for them and to be warriors for them in Congress. This is a very personal issue for me in a lot of ways, in that, I wasn't always a CFO. I started out, in my young 20s as a single mother in poverty, on WIC, on Medicaid, on food stamps, and struggling as I took care of my children to put myself through college. These are vital issues that the people really need to have someone in office that understands not only what it is in that struggle and how hard it is when you're in that struggle, but also understands, the business aspect of it, and also how to, fight for them on things such as the tax bill, who understand what they're talking about and are able to articulate that in Congress and in the Senate. that's so important, that you have lived it and you understand what these bills mean, and you actually take the time to read them before you sign them, and fight for them on that level in Congress.
Let's talk about some other issues. You talk about abolishing for-profit prisons.
Yes.
There was a bill in the last legislature, AB 303, that went all the way through the system, was approved by both houses, was vetoed by the governor, that would have basically said the state of Nevada must provide all the core correctional services. They couldn't be contracted out. They couldn't have private prisons here in Nevada. Why is that important? Why is that issue important?
You know, again, I think there's key things that the profit motive does not belong in, and our prison system is one of them. We should not have profit be part of the equation when we're dealing with people's lives. You know, right now we have a system that's set up right now that is really gearing us towards putting profit over people. It needs to be the other way. In the prison system, it doesn't belong there. It doesn't belong there because it takes away, you know, the purpose of actually people, you know, reforming people instead of making a profit off of them. There's a lot of people that even struggle, you know, with the parole system, not being able to afford it. We need to set people up that have, you know, made mistakes in their lives so that when they are released, they're able to go back into the communities and be productive. I think that's what all of us want. We want to be able, for people after they've paid whatever the price is for the crime they've committed, to be able to have a chance to get back and be, you know, put back into society and be productive.
You talk about other things like, for example, automatic voter registration. There's an initiative that will be on the ballot in 2018, November 2018, that says people will have to opt out if they don't want to register at the DMV when they go to get a license or change their address, as opposed to now it's an opt-in system. So it looks like Nevada may be making progress on that front.
That's great.
That was also vetoed by the governor, by the way.
Oh, gosh. You know, I think we need to move that way. It really helps our democracy. And I think it's important that our public and the people that, you know, are not involved directly in the political process are staying, you know, in tune with what's happening and taking, you know, advantage of their right to vote. That is so important. We need to get more people involved, and I think that's a great initiative.
Yeah. Do you have concern, as some Republicans do, about that process accidentally or even by design registering people who aren't eligible to vote, whether people who have had their voting rights taken away for conviction of a crime or people who are not in the country lawfully? Do you have any concern about that?
No, you know, I don't feel like that is a major problem in the United States. I'm sure that at some places, you know, that does happen, but it's not the most pressing issue. I think what's more important is to ensure that every American is participating in our electoral process, that they are going out and having their voice heard, and that they're voting. And I really think that we need to be moving in that direction. I mean, the number of people that actually vote in our election cycles is horrific in some places. We need to have the people more involved and actually feel like they have ownership in their government and that they're actively engaging with their representatives and making their voice heard. That's so important.
Well, we did get to almost 10% in the last municipal off-year election,
right.
So that's progress right there. You talk on your website about a guaranteed living wage, access to free public education, health care, and affordable housing. It reminded me of FDR's second Bill of Rights, so I went down the list and checked here, and you got all of them except for economic protection during sickness, accident, old age, or unemployment, but I assume you're in favor of that one as well.
Definitely.
Okay. I
definitely would be, you probably consider me an FDR type Democrat. So I believe that a lot of the things that, you know, were initiated in that time period have been beneficial and have helped American people. It's so important that we have a strong working class, that we have a strong economy, and we do that by ensuring that our citizens are protected and have all of the access that they can to education, to health care. You know, these things are what makes our economy strong. We need to have, you know, a really strong workforce, and unless we give them the tools they need and are there for them to help build them up, then we're not accomplishing that.
What kind of undergirded that second revolution was FDR's belief that the American people should be free from fear, fear and want, and not have that dog them every day, so that they could go about their lives without having that hang over them.
And that's really the essence of the American dream, right? That we live to our fullest potential, you know, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, that really is what the American dream should, you know, what we have been told that it is, and what it is. That is the American dream, and that's what, you know, sets us out apart from other countries.
Now, do you think and we heard this constantly during the Democratic primary of 2016, that this rift between the Bernie Sanders wing of the party and the Hillary Clinton wing of the party, which persists to this day as we speak now in the Nevada Democratic Party and elsewhere, is that going to harm the chances of Democrats to get elected? Assuming that Ruben Kihuen does not resign, you file, other Democrats will surely file, perhaps somebody like John Lee, who's known as a more conservative Democrat. Will that fight hurt the Democratic chances and allow a Republican to take the seat? Because a Republican has taken that seat before.
Correct. You know, it's unfortunate. We have fractures in the party. We have fractures in America, where we have seen a lot of dissent recently. The people really need to have their voice heard. I think that, you know, a candidacy such as mine is something that will invigorate people to get involved and come back out and to vote and unify. That's what we need. We need to be talking about the issues. We need to be fighting to ensure that we have warriors in Congress and the Senate. Again, it comes back down to, you know, giving people a reason to have hope and a reason to get involved. And that is done by, again, talking about the issues, getting out and getting their voices heard, and getting them back involved in the political process. And I've seen a lot of support coming from a lot of different parties and people that are just, they're not so concerned about what's behind your name, but what do you stand for? And that's what I really feel like we should be concentrating going into 2018, because that is going to make a huge difference in what happens throughout the remainder of this presidency.
In our last couple of minutes here, let's talk about some other issues. Public lands is a huge issue, especially in the 4th District.
Right.
There are national recreation areas and monuments in those areas, one of which was trimmed a little bit in recent days by a presidential executive order. Do you think that more public land ought to be handed over to the state or turned over to private hands, or do you think the situation the way it is now is fine?
I think that we definitely need to be protecting our public lands. The public lands belong to the people. You know, they should be preserved for our use. I know I enjoy going out hiking and, you know, camping here in Nevada, and we should be ensuring that they're protected instead of sold off to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
They belong to us, and we need to be doing whatever we can to ensure that that remains the same.
So you buy into that idea that if the state were to acquire some of these lands, there was a resolution a couple sessions ago in the legislature to say turn over about 10%, 7.1 million acres of the lands to the state, that in fact, in order to pay for the maintenance of that, some of that would have to be sold off.
Yeah, I do not, you know, advocate for selling off our public lands. I think that we need to be preserving them for the people. And I also think in a state that we really rely heavily on the tourism, it doesn't make sense fiscally either. You know, people don't just come to visit the Strip. They also come from all over the world and love to see our beautiful state of Nevada and all the wonderful places to visit here in our public lands. So we really need to be looking at this holistically. And again, we need to ensure that we are putting, you know, the needs and the rights of the people over profit.
Yeah. What about Yucca Mountain? This has been a controversial issue for many people in the state of Nevada. There are people in the 4th District who want it, who say that this is a jobs program and we want to have it here. The state of Nevada has said no. Its representation in Congress has almost universally said no to Yucca Mountain. Where do you stand?
So, you know, I'm not a scientist, and I do believe that, you know, the first and foremost important thing we need to do is preserve our environment and make sure that we are being, you know, good stewards to the land. That being said, I am definitely, open to hearing from the expert in this field and making sure that, no matter where it goes in the United States, that it is the safest and most reliable way of storing this until we can move to greener energy. We need to be moving towards greener energy. I mean, especially here in Nevada, we have a lot of possibilities here to be forerunners in going towards green energy.
Now, do you consider nuclear power green energy? There's no emissions. Ideally, there's no emissions. If there are, something's gone horribly wrong. But is nuclear power green energy?
There are some forms right now that are being developed and studied that would actually use the waste from our energy programs right now. And, those are things I'm definitely interested in learning more about. But we definitely do need to be looking into that and looking to the experts in the field and be the forerunners again in this and making sure we have green energy.
Okay, well, sounds good. Well, Amy Vilela, thanks so much for taking the time to be on Politics Now. And good luck to you, and we hope you come back.
Thank you.